I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has announced a plan to get cleaner burning cooking stoves into developing countries. The plan aims to reduce deaths caused by smoke from the traditional use of solid fuels and open fires. Almost half the world's people breathe smoke from coal and biomass fuels like wood, dung, and crop waste. The smoke can lead to lung cancer, heart disease, low birth weight, and other problems. It also increases the risk of pneumonia, a leading cause of death in young children. Women and children are most at risk because they spend the most time in the kitchen. Also, in areas of conflict, the search for fuel puts women at increased risk of violence. The goal of the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves is 100 million homes using safer cook stoves and fuels by the year 2020. Secretary Clinton said that clean stoves could make as big a difference in the world as bed nets or vaccines. She said, "The World Health Organization considers smoke from dirty stoves to be one of the 5 most serious health risks that face people in poor developing countries. Nearly 2 million people die from its effects each year, more than twice the number from malaria. And because the smoke contains greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane, as well as black carbon, it contributes to climate change." Founding partners in the alliance include governments and United Nations agencies, nonprofit groups, and the energy company Shell. The alliance hopes to raise at least $250 million within 10 years. The United States has promised to donate more than $50 million over the next 5 years. The aim is to create a strong global market for clean cook stoves. The alliance will identify target markets and work to get women involved in business operations. It will also develop indoor air quality guidelines, test clean stoves and fuels, and develop research roadmaps. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has donated $6 million towards the effort. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson says the problem of cook stove pollution is really an issue of poverty. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read and listen to our programs and learn more about projects in the developing world at voaspecialenglish.com.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. On May 20th, a tornado brought death and destruction to the American community of Moore, Oklahoma. The tornado had wind speeds of up to 400 kilometers an hour. 24 people died when the storm cut through the city. People had only 15 minutes to react to warnings. Some fled Moore or took refuge in the most secure area of their home. The lucky ones took cover in underground shelters or steel and concrete structures called safe rooms. Leslie Chapman Henderson is head of a nonprofit group called the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes. She is a big supporter of tornado-safe rooms. She says they can help reduce the number of tornado deaths. A safe room is built to resist high winds and flying wreckage. Sky Strohal survived the tornado in Moore. He watched as it moved in his direction. He and a friend ran to a neighbor's underground shelter only minutes before the storm struck. Better methods for predicting storms give people like Sky Strohal and his friend more time. But they need someplace safe to go. Structures can be built to resist strong winds, but not all structures may be able to resist a tornado as strong as the one that hit Moore. It was rated F5, the highest possible rating. Moore lies in an area of the United States called Tornado Alley. Powerful storm systems are common. The tornado in May was the fourth to strike the city in 14 years. Moore's mayor is pushing for laws requiring safe rooms in all new buildings. Similar proposals followed other tornado strikes, but no laws were passed. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Millions of babies and children could soon be protected against the deadly disease, pneumonia. Two leading drug companies have agreed to supply vaccines against pneumococcal disease to the world's poorest countries at a reduced price. Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline signed the historic Advance Market Commitment Agreement in March. The Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, or Gavi, helped negotiate the deal. The group says the low-cost vaccines could save as many as 7 million lives by the year 2030. The World Health Organization says pneumonia kills almost 2 million children each year. This is more than AIDS, malaria, and measles combined. It is the leading cause of death among young children. And more than 90% of those deaths happen in the developing world. These are all reasons why Gavi chose the pneumococcal vaccine for its first Advance Market Commitment project. The private-public partnerships are designed to increase the availability of low-cost vaccines in poor areas. Last year, the governments of Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, Russia, and Norway joined with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They provided $1.5 billion to launch the pneumococcal vaccine project. Jeffrey Rowland is with the Gavi Alliance. He says the money helps to persuade drug makers to take part in the project. GlaxoSmithKline and Pfizer are the first two drug companies to take part. They have agreed to provide 30 million doses of the vaccine each year for 10 years. The first 20% of the vaccines will sell for $7 a dose. The remaining 80% will cost $3.50 per dose. That is 90% less than current prices in the United States. Mr. Rowland says the agreement is a huge achievement for the developing world. He says vaccination is a life or death question for poor people. If you can vaccinate a child to prevent a disease from happening, it is a lot more cost-effective than it is to treat that disease afterwards. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. For transcripts and podcasts of our programs, along with captioned videos and a lot more, visit us at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on
Learning
Facebook.
English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Probably the last place you would look for interactive media would be a graveyard. But a company called Aspetos has come up with a way to remember lost loved ones. Its workers in Austria are placing what the company calls quick response codes onto gravestones. This means that anyone with a smartphone can get information about the buried person by scanning a code on the gravestone. The family of the deceased has control over who can access the information. The company works with the family to decide what kind of information to provide about the deceased person. That information might include picture galleries, streaming video, the eulogy, and the obituary. Mourners can access the data with a smartphone directly at the grave area, and that data can be saved for future generations. The company says it wants to make the technology weather and disaster proof. Aspetos employees say this can be difficult. They have to use special techniques to protect the quick response code. This ensures that the code, which holds the data, cannot be destroyed or rubbed away. Vienna's Central Cemetery holds the graves of Austrian composer and pianist Ludwig van Beethoven. A monument honoring the Austrian composer Wolfgang Mozart is also there. There are no plans to tag these landmarks with codes, but that could happen in the future. Then, the thousands of visitors who come to pay their respects to these famous men would have more ways to remember them. For VOA Learning English,
From VOA
I'm
Learning
Laurel
English,
Bowman.
this is the Technology Report in Special English. The shock of Superstorm Sandy exposed problems in New York and other areas hard hit by the storm. Sandy struck the northeastern United States in October, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without electricity. Officials blamed Sandy for over 100 deaths and more than $50 billion in property damage. The storm left about 8 million people without power for days. This included nearly 5 million people in New York State and New Jersey. Sandy flooded parts of New York City's subway system, and it affected other transportation. It delayed fuel trucks, resulting in long lines at gasoline stations. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said Superstorm Sandy showed there were problems with New York's infrastructure. He said the failure of the city's public utility system is of real concern. He said the systems were built at different times and some need to be upgraded. The storm has led to calls for power companies to bury more electrical lines underground. But at least one expert says that did not help New York. Otto Lynch is with Power Line Systems in Wisconsin. He said New York lost power because power lines were underground. He said that means problems are harder to find. Otto Lynch is also a member of America's Infrastructure Committee at the American Society of Civil Engineers. The group released its last report on the nation's infrastructure in 2009. He said the report gave an average grade of D, a very low grade, to all of America's infrastructure. For VOA Learning English, this is the VOA Special English Development Report. The United Nations held a World Summit on Food Security in November. But the three-day meeting in Rome produced only limited measures to fight rising hunger. The UN World Food Program says more than 1 billion people, 1 in 6 worldwide, do not get enough food to be healthy. The troubled world economy is not the only cause of recent increases. The poorest countries continue to face high food prices, which have fallen elsewhere. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says more than 30 nations continue to need emergency food assistance. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, "The food crisis has forced millions of families into poverty and hunger." He said 6 million children die of hunger every year. And he warned that food security is closely connected to the issue of climate change. He said, at a time when the global population is growing, our global climate is changing. By 2050, we will need to grow 70% more food. Yet weather is becoming more extreme and unpredictable. The delegates in Rome promised to continue efforts to reduce by half the number of hungry people by 2015. But critics pointed out that world leaders made a similar promise more than 10 years ago. Several countries promised to increase aid for agriculture to help developing nations become more independent. Still, critics deplored a lack of greater action. Leaders from more than 60 countries were in Rome, but Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi was the only leader from a major industrial nation in the group of 8. An official from Kenya said it showed a lack of unity in the fight against hunger. The Food and Agriculture Organization says more than $40 billion a year needs to be invested in agriculture to defeat world hunger. The growing problem has affected developing countries, but also industrialized nations. The government estimates that 49 million people in the United States were food insecure in 2008. That means their households, at some time during the year, had difficulty providing enough food for all members because of a lack of resources. Almost 15% of all households were in that situation. And the Agriculture Department says the numbers may be even higher in 2009. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has announced a plan to get cleaner burning cooking stoves into developing countries. The plan aims to reduce deaths caused by smoke from the traditional use of solid. The goal of the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves is 100 million homes using safer cook stoves and fuels by the year 2020. Secretary Clinton said that clean stoves could make as big a difference in the world as bed nets or vaccines. She said, "The World Health Organization considers smoke from dirty stoves to be one of the 5 most serious health risks that face people in poor developing countries. Nearly 2 million people die from its effects each year, more than twice the fuels and open fires. Almost half the world's people breathe smoke from coal and biomass fuels like wood, dung, and crop waste. The smoke can lead to lung cancer, heart disease, low birth weight, and other problems. It also increases the risk of pneumonia, a leading cause of death in young children. Women and children are most at risk because they spend the most time in the kitchen. Also, in areas of conflict, the search for fuel puts women at increased risk of violence.